Hello, and welcome to another helping of A Spoonful of History. My name is Mr. Spoonhauer, and today we are going to be discussing the fall of the Roman Empire, which is part 2 of my Rome notes. Let's talk first about Rome's decline. What I'd like to talk about first is after Diocletian and his reforms, and as they failed, after him there were several emperors called Severns that stayed in power but completely ignored problems. What happened was that before him there was an emperor named Commodus, and Commodus was a really bad leader. He was completely crazy, was obsessed with gladiator games, actually competed in gladiator games himself, and was more interested in being a gladiator rather than an emperor. So he allowed law and order and everything within the civilization or the empire of Rome to collapse. And when he died, the next few emperors, or 22 I should say, different leaders called Severns came to power, but they were more interested in battling and killing each other and fighting for power than to actually create stability and law and order back in the empire. So because of this, they completely ignored problems because they were too busy fighting against each other. This led to a very unstable government, because if you're fighting against each other and not really paying attention to the policies at hand, as well as the rise of inflation, there's no law, there's no order, everything is going to basically break down. Officials, even though they practiced the philosophy of Stoicism, this idea of civic virtue, and many of them believed that to be a good public leader, one should have civic virtue and to be righteous and to be moral. Most of them, though, on the sly, took bribes from other people to benefit family, friends, and other wealthy businesses. This would cause a breakdown of law and order because people, the Roman citizens, begin to lose faith in their lawmakers and begin to lose faith in the law, and they begin to kind of look after each other rather than caring about the law. Because of this, they began to put less. The public officials began to put less gold in their money, causing inflation, which meaning that the price of everything goes up, yet the value of the money goes down. So everything would cost 3, 4, 5 times as much as what it originally should have cost because money is worthless. This led to bartering, meaning people began to trade with one another for grain or milk or meat or services, and because of the bartering, this meant that the Roman legislature was not able to tax as much, which led to less money in the bank and in the treasury to allow them to keep the empire running. Because of this, you also begin to have tribes from the north, the Germanic tribes, the Goths, the Visigoths, the Vandals, and this is kind of an unfair idea that they invaded. This actually is a steady thing. It is basically a steady form of immigration that these Germanic tribes, like I said, the Goths, the Visigoths, the Vandals, that they begin to come down into Italy looking for warmer climates, better farming, livestock, and those type of things. And then over decades, they begin to come more and more and more, begin to live among the Roman people, marry other Roman people, creating a whole different demographic of Rome. And eventually what's going to happen is that because of this immigration and because of the two different types of people living in there, and because you have the Severns that are busy battling themselves, you're going to wind up seeing riots in the streets. You're going to see buildings getting burned down, and because of this, there is a lot of hardships and violence that's breaking out into the kingdom. This leads to Diocletian. Okay, Diocletian is going to come about after the Severns, and he's going to try to fix what the 22 other leaders let go. And so what he is going to do is he's going to divide up the empire into 4 separate parts, because the empire is so large it's too difficult to govern. So what he does is he breaks it up into 4 different parts, putting governors in each part that will run each part of the kingdom but be loyal to him. He will also try to stop inflation by setting prices and wages, so people will not be gouged by inflation, causing people to actually start to buy things again rather than barter. And then he also does job reforms, where he basically tells people that they have to stay in their jobs until death, which would kind of create stability within the empire. Even though he tried, it was too little too late, and all the reforms failed. After Diocletian is Constantine. Constantine will basically continue some of Diocletian's reforms. He will add to the worker reform that Diocletian instituted, and will add upon it, saying that sons had to follow their fathers within their trade. So if a father was a lawyer, the kid would have to follow as a lawyer. If the father was a tax collector, follow as a tax collector. A garbage man, follow as a garbage man. He will also break up make Christianity the legal religion of Rome, where Diocletian made it illegal. Constantine will make it legal, and many people will begin to convert to Christianity in Rome. He will also, because all the violence and the decay within the Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire on the Italian peninsula, he will move the capital of Rome to the old Byzantine Empire, which is in modern-day Turkey, and he will rename it Constantinople after himself. After Constantine dies, Theodosius is going to take power, and what he does is he tries to end the fighting within the empire, especially within the Western Empire. After he dies, he officially splits the empire into 2, the East and the West, and basically his prodigy, his ancestors will take care of the East, while there is another group that will take care of the West. At this time, both the East and the Western Roman Empire was run by Romans. So the Western Roman Empire equals Rome, and the Eastern Roman Empire equals Constantinople. And again, I can't stress this enough. Both East and West were run and led by Rome, still under the control of Rome. However, remember when we talked about the idea of Germanic tribes, the Goths, the Visigoths, the Vandals, and how their steady migration into Italy because of the warmer climates, the cattle and grain and food and things like that. Well, after a while, because there are so many Germans, the Romans and the German tribes are not getting along very well. Riots began to break out on the Italian peninsula, and it is here that Rome is sacked, or basically burned to the ground. The Treasury Department and other records are basically burned to the ground. Okay, and after this is kind of considered the fall of the Western Roman Empire. So Odoacer, who comes in, he is a German. He will overthrow the last official Roman emperor, who was from Rome, Romulus Augustus, who at 14 is easily overthrown, and Odoacer will actually overthrow him. Where Alaric is the one that will sack Rome at the beginning, and then Odoacer will finish things off. Next, we have Rome's legacy. Now, even though Rome the Western Roman Empire will have officially fallen. Eventually, after Odoacer, the peninsula of Italy will break up into small little, what they call duchies, or little city states within Rome, and eventually will not be reunited until Charlemagne, in which he will unite Europe again for the first time since the fall of Rome, and be called the Holy Roman Emperor. But that is not for a very long time in our story. But after Odoacer, and that Rome pretty much breaks down into small little city-states. And even though Rome is gone, its legacy will never be forgotten and will have dramatic influences on Western society even to this day. First of all, when you look at it, government, the style of government that we have in America, the idea of representative government, electing leaders democratically to be our voice and to make decisions for us, is really modeled after the Roman Republic. The idea of equality under the law, meaning that we are judged by a system of laws, not by privilege or by prejudice. That law should be fair, that we are innocent until proven guilty, is another concept that comes from the Romans. The idea of a republic, remember in the United States, we are not a democracy, we are actually a republic. We democratically elect our leaders, but after that, our leaders are there to make the decisions for us by the consent of us who put them there. And if they keep doing their jobs right, they stay in power. If not, we get rid of them and put people in that will do the job that we want them to get done. And that basically is a republic. The Latin language is another throwback to the Roman Empire. Nowadays, we don't walk around and speak Latin to each other, but when you look at certain English words, we have Latin and Greek roots and suffixes that begin or end certain words. When you look at the legal language or science, words in science, they are greatly influenced by Latin. Architecture, the style of the column, the aqueduct, the arches, those types of styles of architecture. If you go to Washington, D.C., or even the Capitol here in Sacramento, you see the style of architecture is very reminiscent of Rome, and that is because at the time that those buildings were being built, there was a yearning to kind of copy our republic after the Roman Republic. And lastly, the Christianity, which was basically instituted as the official religion of Rome by Constantine. Christianity will basically begin and flourish and spread throughout the world as a result of the Roman Empire. And that will be the end of our lecture on the fall of the Roman Empire. As I went over here, our next lecture series will be on the Byzantine Empire, which is the Eastern Roman Empire. But we are actually going to do a couple activities and a test before we actually get into the Roman activity, the Byzantine Empire. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to our next session of A Spoonful of History when we talk about the Byzantines.